Welcome back to another installment of Pinescript tutorials. In today's video, I'm going to explain how to write your own functions so that when you're writing your own scripts, you can write one piece of code and then call on that multiple times rather than writing it out multiple times. So first of all, I'm going to give you an example. The Fibonacci retracement is a tool that I use quite often where you measure a swing low to a swing high and it plots out it's kind of like placing a ruler over your charts, and then it shows you where the 23.6 level was, which will be here, 38.2, 50%, 61.8 and 78.6. So from the recent move we've just had, halfway back, this would be considered as kind of like an equilibrium stage where between the bulls pushing the price up and the bears pushing it all the way back down again. Halfway in the middle would be generally where they might agree is where the common price should be. And a lot of people use Fibonacci retracements to get entries, potentially even exits. They tend to use the levels as support and resistance. Some people would draw it sort of closer to the action, where for example the 50% line could be plotted there, and then if I pull that all the way back down to here, then people might say, well, it's going to go further down, could go all the way down to there, so there's the 50% there, place it up there. So now that 50% line, which was drawn here, if it's measured from this swing low, it's now closer to the 78.6. So what we're going to do is, instead of drawing out this Fibonacci tool and depending on where we're going to place the parts, we're going to make it a kind of like a moving Fibonacci. So let's start. Beginning in a new script, I'm going to call this script something imaginative. Let's call it moving Fibonacci. That's not spelled correctly at all. No, it's only one N and then it's two C's. Cool. Just to make it a little bit prettier, I'm going to give it a short title, and that's going to be called, or let's call that Autofib. Yeah, that's cool. Now I'm also going to want to display this on top of the charts, on top of the candles, so I need to overlay this indicator over the candles. So I'm going to call the function, not the function, I'm going to place overlay and call that true. Cool. So then whatever I plot, so if I just hit save, let's save that now. Call that moving Fibonacci. That'll do. It's not really a Fibonacci at the moment, but if I add that to my chart, let's just move this window down a tad. There we go. And you probably can't see that. I'll just make that a little bit easier to see. Let's call it a yellow color and do that. No, let's whack up. There we go. Okay, so if we can zoom in here, I might even just move this to the front. So there we go. So that line is basically plotting over the top of the candles. Right. So let's go back into our code and continue with what we were doing. Now, to create a function, I'm going to need, in this script, I'm going to need a length of time. So let's call this fib length, and we're going to get the user to input in whatever they want. So at this stage, I'm just going to give it a default value of 30, and I'm going to tell the user what it's all about. Let's call it let's just call it length. Why not? Cool, that'll do. Okay, so now we're going to build a function. Now a function, it's well, you could say that a very simplistic or layman's term way of understanding what a function is think of it like, say, a kitchen appliance. Let's call it a blender. Now the function of a blender is to take ingredients and chop it up really fine and blend it all up, and the output would be basically a liquidy, soupish mix of whatever you put in it. So the function of the blender is to blend whatever you put into it. So what we're going to do is we're going to call this function. It's kind of like a variable, but this time the variable now has an output based on the parameters that you input. Whereas a standard variable is just, it's like a box that holds a value, and that value can be called upon. So let's call it fib, and to pass the parameters into it, we're going to open parenthesis and we're going to give it two variables. The first variable is going to be a length. I'm just going to put len, and then we separate that with a comma, and then the second one I'm going to call it ratio. So in the fib we're going to pass into it two inputs, a length and a ratio. Now to create the function from that, we're going to go equals greater than, and it kind of looks like a little arrow, you could say, arrow pointing to the right. Now we're going to go a new line, but this time we're going to hit tab, and that means that whatever's on this side of the tab is part of this function. So you can't start writing from the margin. You can't use 1, 2 or 3 spaces. You need to use either 4 spaces or a tab. So tab is easier. Okay, now what we're going to put in here is we need to start with, well, the Fibonacci is going to have a highest and a lowest value, and within that range is going to have the Fibonacci levels overlaid inside that range. So first we need to get a range. So let's call create a variable range, and that range is going to be equal to the highest value within the length of time. Now this time remember that we are calling the parameter that was passed in, and we called that parameter len, L-E-N. So let's type in len. So then it doesn't matter what number you put in there, it's going to get passed into the highest function here. Now to get a range, we need to take the highest value and we need to subtract the lowest value within the length. And so for example, if we were looking at this swing low to swing high, that swing low, and that candle there is the highest. So our range at this current moment, if this was the length of period that we were inputting in, then we would have the highest value, which looks like 7127.9, and the lowest value is 6557. So the difference of that is our range at this point in time. Now we're going to go into a new line. Now we have a range, we have a value stored in our range, and now we're going to calculate the ratio of that range. So I'm going to call that range underscore ratio. Now the ratio is now going to utilize this parameter that we passed in, ratio. So I'm going to make this variable range ratio equal to the highest within the length of period, length of time, minus, and now I'm going to put in brackets, range times ratio. So what that's doing is, say we pass in the ratio of, say, 50%. What this is doing is it's saying take the highest, that's not how you spell highest, by the way, there you go, the highest value within that length of period. So in this case it was 7127.9, and we're going to minus the value that is the range times the ratio. So if it's 50%, it would be whatever the range was between the high and the low. Half of that, 50%, would get somewhere around whatever that value is, and we're going to get the ratio 50% times that range, and whatever that value is. So in this case if we're using 50%, let's use an arrow. We're going from the high, and I'm going to take magnet mode off. There we go. We're going to go from the high, and then we're going to get the 50% of the whole range, which is all the way from there down to there. So 50% of that is basically here, and then that's the value that we're after, because we called 50% of the range. So range ratio is the highest minus the value that is the half of the range. Alright, and that's the function all in one go, 3 lines. We pass in 2 parameters, we calculate a range from the highest to the lowest, and then we get the range ratio, which is the highest minus that range times the ratio we passed in here as well. So now I can get back to the left margin, and now we're out of the function. So if we create a temporary variable for now, let's call it Fib50 for example. That's now a new variable. I'm going to say it equals, now I'm going to call my function. Just like we called highest here or lowest, I'm going to call the new function I've created by going fib, and now I need to pass it 2 variables. The first variable it wants is the length, which we defined up here, fib length, so I'll just take that and we'll pass that into there. And then the second variable is the ratio, so I'm going to say 0.5, which is 50%. Now if I just take that and plot that, just for argument's sake, let's complete this line. So we're going to go, the color is going to be equal to, and I'm going to call the function color. I'm going to give it a lime color with 0 transparency. I'm going to title it. Title it equals, let's call it 50%. And I'm also going to make the line width equal to, let's give it 1 for now. You can make it anything you like. So now if I hit save, actually let's just tidy up the chart for a second. Delete everything, gone, cool. Alright, so we'll save that. Wait for the little asterisk to disappear, get rid of the advertising, get rid of that, and hit add to chart. Oh, there it is, it's already on there. And let's do that again. Add to chart. Okay, so now we have a lime green line which is halfway between the highest high and the lowest low within 30 periods back. So if I take the date and time measuring tool and I go find 30 bars, there we go, and I put that right on the last there, then the lowest point would be here, right about there. So in this case I am taking a Fibonacci extension. Actually, let's just grab an arrow just so we can point to the arrow. That is the lowest value. Now I can get rid of that. So if I take a Fibonacci retracement tool from that low to that high, and let's put magnet mode back on just so it makes it easier. Boop, snap and snap, cool. So there we can see now that this line has made it all the way back to the 50% line. Right there. Cool. Alright, so we've got 50%, now we need the rest of them. Now the easiest way I'm going to do with this is instead of creating different variables, fib50, fib236, all of them, I'm just going to take that, copy that, and I'm going to plot that function straight in there rather than creating variables. So now I can get rid of that line, tidy it up. So we're going to copy that whole line once and twice, and we're going to put that ratio is going to be the 2. Actually, no, let's go let's go 0, and I'll copy that again, and we'll call this one 236, and we'll call that one 382. We already got that one, and that one's next one's going to be 61.8, and that one's going to be 786. And then this one can be 1. Well, in other words, 100%. So now let's give it some different colors. We'll make the 0 and the 100, we'll make those white. Just sort of like they're the borders, you could say. Now 236, personally I like to stick to a common color scheme that makes sense to me. So to me 236 is red, 382 is going to be yellow, green, 50% is lime, that's cool. 61.8, I'm going to call that aqua. 786 will be teal, and then we've got white, and let's go 0%, 236%, yeah, 23.6, and then 236, and then we've got 38.2, yep, 50%, 61.8, 78.6, and then 100. So now if I hit save, we should not have any errors. Yay! Look at that! Now we've got a Fibonacci level that is moving all the way. There we go. So now I could go down to say a 3-minute candle, and now we've got a Fibonacci from that. Now I could also go into it and choose, let's call it, let's go 100 periods back. Boom. So now on a 3-minute candle, looks like we've got, that's our lowest low and that's our highest high, which means our 50% retracement is here. So within 100 candles back, currently as I'm looking at it, we are close to the 50%. We have popped below it and we're pretty close to equilibrium. So that is how we do a moving average, not a moving average, a moving Fibonacci levels using a custom function. So in summary, a function needs to have parameters passed into it on another line with 4 spaces from the left margin, or 1 tab. You have your lines, and as long as you start each line with a tab, it is part of that function. It's not until you return back to the left margin that you're now outside of the function. So there you go, very quick tutorial on how to do custom functions and introducing the Fibonacci retracement tool. Now in future videos I am going to be using a custom function and using something along the lines of Fibonacci, and it's going to be called Ichimoku. And if you don't know what an Ichimoku is, you can Google it, you can look it up. I highly recommend the indicator. It's really cool. It looks a little bit complicated when you first see it. If I just quickly show it to you, and I go Ichi and Ichimoku Cloud, there it is, and what you see is nothing. Wow, there it is. Wow, and that is not the correct settings, but anyway, generally the correct settings you'll see are 9, 26, 52 and 26. There we go. So that's sort of, and also you have these lines. So you look at that and you go, oh my god, look at all those lines and colors, and what does that all mean, and how do I make sense of that? I'm used to moving averages, or I'm used to RSI. What am I looking at here? At this stage, it looks like a mess. But once you understand what each component is, what it does, and how it's built, it's an amazing indicator. It really is. So stay tuned. If you want to start looking into Ichimoku, I recommend this webpage here, kumotrader.com. I'll put the link in the description. Explains a lot about it. I won't really go into the history of it, but it's fantastic. It's all about equilibrium, balance and harmony. But here is also how to trade it as well, some ways to do it. So really cool. In fact, Great coffee, that. A good friend of mine, Rob, has a podcast, and he's I just put him onto the using the Ichimoku, and he's having much better success. If you're really liking your podcasts, I do recommend this one, Chump Change. Rob and Luke are a great bunch of guys. They sort of research out the news, the crypto news, and put it together, easily digestible. Yeah, brilliant podcast. Listen to it on your whatever app you're on, iTunes or Spotify, wherever it is. Yeah, get onto it. Give it a subscription. Maybe send them an email, ask some questions, whatever you want to do. They're on Twitter. That's the email, chumpchange@financier.com. Send them your love, man. So that's me for now. Coming up in future episodes, I will show you how to build this indicator, the Ichimoku, and by doing it step by step, I hope to teach you guys how to understand it, what you're looking at, and why it's designed the way it is. Alrighty, guys. So have a great day. Do awesome things. Be nice to everyone around you, and I guess the best thing about learning new stuff is you grow. And what I like to say is always strive to be the wisest person you can possibly be, but never the wisest person you know. Alright, so in other words, make sure that the people around you are more knowledgeable than you, so you can go to them and learn. If you're the wisest person you know, you've got no more to learn from anyone else, and you stagnate. Well, that's my theory anyway. Catch you later, guys, and see you in the next episode. Ta-ta for now.